Hey guys, I recently made a video in reaction to Brandon Tatum's opinion about rap music. And I really wasn't going to say much else about this guy. I wasn't going to be like, oh, this is going to be a thing where I make reaction videos to what this guy says. But because I made that reaction video, the YouTube algorithm started suggesting videos from his channel. Also, I've been following the news about the Gaza Israel conflict, and I guess maybe the algorithm was like, he likes this, he likes this. So what it's decided to do, the algorithm that is suggest this video where Brandon Tatum gives his take on a conflict between Candace Owens and Megyn Kelly. I'm not going to watch this whole thing. I'm only going to go with the first few minutes of this and just kind of be like, I know this guy has a lot of fans, but he's dumb as shit. He's dumb. Like, he's dumb as dog shit. And on top of that, he's a grifter. I can't even really say he's a smart grifter. I shouldn't say he's dumb. Well, he is dumb. He's dumb, and we'll see that. But he's clearly a grifter. So I have to do this. I don't want to. I definitely want to. Part of me wants to, and part of me wants to just leave it alone. This will probably be the last one, unless he does something crazy. But he's not. He's not really. He's going to be off my radar. I just have to respond to this. I'm not going to so much respond to the conflict in Israel, but just respond to his take on it. Okay, so let's do this. Why not? Okay, here we go.
TatumStore.com, TatumStore.com. Get the merch link in the description section. Get you one of these shirts. Yahweh. Get the link in the description section. This is my favorite shirt I've created. And obviously people know that I got Hebrew on my arm. I got it in Jerusalem when I was out in Israel. And it was one of the greatest experiences I've ever had in my life. I just loved Israel. I could live in Israel, to be honest. But I'm saddened that this stuff has happened. But get you one of these shirts if you like.
Okay, so comment on this. I think this is kind of ironic. He's got the shirt in Hebrew, and he's like, I got the tattoos. And he's got other videos talking about how much he supports Israel. Now, the thing I find this interesting, if you guys aren't aware of this, some of the biggest supporters of Israel are evangelical Christians. You would probably find a greater number of evangelical Christians that are supporters of Israel than you will actually Jewish people. And that live in the U.S. And what you'll do is he's going to conflate Jewish people with Israelis, by the way. And the reason why that is because evangelical Christians have this whole belief that Jewish people have to reestablish the nation of Israel, rebuild the temple, and then it'll bring about the second coming of Jesus. But what they don't really say is that in their prophecy, the majority of Jews die because they refuse to accept Jesus as their Savior. That's their prophecy. So ultimately, the evangelicals kind of see they see Jews as these useful tools to bring about their prophecy, and they're using the Jews. That's why they're so supportive of Israel, is because of their own means. And it isn't. And ultimately, the Jews have to accept their Savior. I think this is ironic because basically that's what Tatum's doing here. He's kind of using Israel as part of his grift. Anyway.
If you want to represent Yahweh, if you like the Hebrew letters, go ahead and get it. If you don't want it, then don't get it. Like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bells and get notification. Anytime I go live, make a video, make sure you still subscribe to this channel. Like this video, comment this video, share this video. Let's get into this. Ladies and gentlemen, ladies, I've been waiting all weekend to say what I'm about to say right now. It is mind-blowing to me. And I understand both sides, but it is mind-blowing to me that people don't understand the truth. There are people that believe the Palestinians were done.
Okay, so he's going to say, I understand both sides. I don't know what he means by he understands both sides, because if he's going to say he understands both sides, is he going to reference the apartheid situation in Israel? Apartheid isn't this nebulous concept. Apartheid has an actual political definition. involves restriction of movement. I mean, that's a big element of it. It involves being restricted from going to certain areas, going back to the restriction of movement. Also, we know that that Gaza, the average age in Gaza, you guys probably keep hearing this over and over again, that the average age in Gaza is 18, and the average age of the Palestinians in general is about, I think it's years old. So one of the contributors of that are the conditions in Gaza that less than, or only about, I think it's maybe 5% of the water that goes into Gaza is guaranteed to be clean and potable. So kidney diseases for that reason are very high in Gaza. That's just one of the many issues there. They have an extremely high unemployment rate. And when you have high unemployment and when you have impoverished conditions, you have crime. This is just, if you're trying to build a situation, that's what you get. And then, well, if you go to the West Bank, the conditions are slightly better than Gaza, but what's been happening there is that you have settlers. And of recently, basically, the Israeli government has been using the IDF to support these settlers. So you can be a person in the U.S., you can be an American, and you can be Jewish, and you can go to West Bank and be like, I'm taking this, I'm a settler. And by the way, you can find videos of this online. This isn't like a fringe thing. All I'm doing here is just stating, if what I've said has upset you, I'm sorry. I'm just stating, like, I'm literally just stating facts. I haven't given notice I didn't really say an opinion with that. The reason I bring that up is that if you're going to talk about reactions of people say, I understand both sides, you should be able to at least acknowledge those things, but then justify your opinion. He isn't going to really acknowledge it. And honestly, and he's going to say something pretty soon, which I think really shows he doesn't understand shit. All right, let me continue. Sorry, guys. Professional here.
Done wrong by, the Israelis, by the Jews, and that they deserve to fight back and recover their land. But brother,
Okay, so once again, he keeps conflating Israelis and Jews. And there are a lot of Jews who don't support Israel, they're not Zionists, but also, guys, 20% of the population of Israel is Arab. And that was a result of the 1947, I think it was 47 partition. So there's a significant population of Israel that is in fact Arab. I honestly don't think this dude really understands that. And honestly, I don't think he really cares. I think he's a dumbass, guys. Brandon, I'm going to say it. My opinion can change. But at this point, I think Brandon Tatum's a dumbass. I think he's a smart grifter. Just like I think Trump is a dumbass, but he's also a smart grifter. If me and Tatum were going into a grift off, he would beat me every time. I wouldn't have the grifting skills. But yeah, he's a dumbass. Fuck it. I'll say it. He's a dumbass.
Like, what planet are we living on? The Jews were there first anyway. So if you want to come up with a tactic or you want to come up with a theology to say whose land it is and who stole what from what, the Jewish people had it way before anybody else. That's like, listen.
Okay, screw it, whatever, right? So, yeah, here's the thing. You have in that area, he's going back to 2,000 years. Okay, I'll say two things with this. He's going back 2,000 years. And within that area, just like all parts of the world, you had tribes that were warring over land. So if you're talking about that part of the land, that part of the world, you're going to have a number of tribes who are fighting over, and one of them would have been the various Jewish tribes. Now, do you claim land that you had 2,000 years ago? Honestly, I don't even understand how that works. I guess I could, I have ancestry that goes back to Nigeria. Maybe I could show up in Nigeria and claim land. But what he's going to say next, though, because I think right now he kind of, he has to acknowledge something. That's the funny thing about him. Like, he knows that he'll say something which is in contradiction to another opinion he has. So he has to deal with that. So, for example, when he was talking about rap music, he was talking about how rap music was so misogynistic. But then he had to acknowledge that Donald Trump also says terrible things about women. So he's like, yeah, rap music says such and such about women. And yeah, Donald Trump said that, but at least he apologized. So watch this. Watch what he does here.
And I noticed it never happened because there's repercussions for it. If we take over a certain person's land and they want to come back and get it, good luck. America's not giving it back. It's ours now. So if you were here 100 years before us or whatever the case may be, you ain't getting it.
See, you see that? You see that? So it's like, okay, so and by the way, there is actually a population of Jewish people. There's been a constant population of Jewish people who lived in the Middle East. It's just that after 1947, there was a whole deal where it was the Ottomans had controlled that territory for several centuries. Then when the British took over, and the British, because a lot of Jews had helped them basically in World War I, they promised a territory to Jews, a Jewish homeland. But I think around that time, there's always been a Jewish population, and I think around 1947, I want to say the population of the land, which is now Israel, I think it was around 5 or 10%. So acknowledge there's always been a Jewish population there. It's just that they were the minority. And actually, the English, they actually came up with this deal where they were going to partition the land. But the problem with it is that by the time, because Jews had already started going to land, because this is after World War II, of course, because 1947, they didn't have anywhere to go. I mean, 6 million exterminated. But they had been already illegally entering. I shouldn't even say illegally, because quite honestly, I mean, freedom of movement. I mean, technically illegally, but I believe in freedom of movement. And just because, the British are occupying it, what gives them the right? But they had already started, let me do quotes, illegally entering the land at that point. But at that time, when they were partitioning the land, basically the Arab population, and by the way, there are other ethnic minorities in there, but these are the two largest groups, Arabs and Jews. I think the Arab population was, well, I'll just put it in terms of this. I think the Jewish population at the time was maybe about 35% of the population. And basically Arabs were the remainder. But they had promised the Jewish population 55% of the land, even though they were only 35% of the population. And the land that they promised the Jewish people was the most fertile land, and the land that was on the coast. So the Arabs were like, no, this is not a good deal. We don't like this. So the problems kind of began with what they were doing when the British once again, guess what? The British show up. And even when they're not trying to do it, the way they divide land up, it's going to put groups against one another, because that's just what they always did. Now I'm going to guess Brandon Tatum probably don't know this shit. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he probably doesn't know this. Guys, I'm not a historian. All I do is it's just a matter of just basic research. I don't know. It's not even really research. It's just like listening to news and listening to people who actually think, because these things are nuanced. The big thing though is that he says we got the land now, so just get over it. So let me get this straight. So if a bunch of Native Americans, right, from Canada, First Nations people, joined with Native Americans in the U.S. and said, we're going to get our country back, right? Or not country, but our land back. He wouldn't be like, well, they have the right to be here. He would say, well, just get over it. They weren't here 100 years before the people who are here now. They were here thousands of years before. They were here before. I don't know what I'm trying to say. We're talking about just, let me put it this way, I'll get my thoughts straight. We're talking about just a few centuries ago. So the Jewish people in his mind, have a claim to land that was 2,000 years ago, but the indigenous people here don't have a claim to that land. How do you do that? How do you do that mental gymnastics where you make that claim? Because according to you, dude, they should just be able to show up and take their land. And if we fight back against the Native Americans, the combined, might of the indigenous people of Canada, of the people living, the Native Americans living in the U.S. And let's say that the people in South America are like, we're going to help you too because, you know, we're all Native Americans and the Americas were ours. We are supposed to fight for our land because they got to get over it. How do you even, the fact that he acknowledged it, like it's the dumbest hypocrisy. Because it's just like, am I missing something? Am I really missing something? This guy's dumb as shit. It's okay.
Back. But with the Jewish people and the Arabics and the Arabians or whatever you want to call it, these people that come
the Jew and the Arabs and the rape, this dumb. Okay, guys, so here's a quick lesson for y'all. If you would have went to that part of the world, Israel, the Levant, as it's referred to, they would not have been Arabians. This is what happened. Right around, I think, starting around 600 AD, there was what's been referred to as the Arab conquest. And basically what happened is a number of tribal groups from the Arabian Peninsula, what's now Saudi Arabia, started expanding from Saudi Arabia and occupying and conquering lands and bringing their religion with them. So before that, if you went to that part of the world, they would not have referred to themselves as Arabs, and they would not have spoke Arabic because the Arabs, the name coming from the Arabian Peninsula, was now Saudi Arabia, hadn't encountered that land yet. They were not speaking Arabic. I mean, even in Egypt, they would have been speaking Coptic. They would have been speaking a Phoenician language. They would have been speaking a Semitic language, but it wouldn't have been Arabic. So these people wouldn't have been Arabs. But what happened is the populations there, which would have been the ancestors of the current Palestinians, eventually they would have been occupied by the Arabs. Or they would have, or a combination of that, and also adopting Islam, which would have basically kept the Arabic language, would have helped spread the Arabic language. So there's the religious component that helps spread the Arabic language. So that's why if you go, the further you go west, the Arabic becomes, I don't want to say it becomes a little diluted, but it becomes diluted. It changes. So basically, like the Arabic they speak in Morocco and the Arabic that they speak in Egypt, they are very, very different. And I don't know the level of mutual intelligibility there. But for example, people who live, and I know definitely in Libya, Morocco, and maybe even Algeria, they're referred to as Berbers. So they would not have been Arabian as this dude. Like, I'm just saying, guys, like, I know you, like, probably what's going to happen is I'm going to have people who watch this video who support this dude. But isn't it just like an indicator that what I'm saying now is I am just literally presenting you information. Does it seem that he knows this stuff? And if he does, like, do you just like, is it comforting to be in the blanket of dumbassery? Like, just have some basic curiosity about the world so you know this stuff. I'm not an expert, guys. I'm not. But if you look, the things I'm saying, it's like, it's true. You can really look at it. God, I don't want to say GD. I need to quit say GD, but sweet Lord.
From that region, Palestinians specifically in that particular state, in that country, the Jews were there before you anyway. So I don't know why people even arguing this. And people talk about these.
Okay, the Native Americans were here before you stupid bastard. I think he lived in Arizona. So do you need to leave so the Hopi can be? Do you need to leave where the Pueblo can be? Do you need to leave where the Navajo can take over? You would be, no, well, this is our country. How do you do that? Like, how do you guys handle the cognitive dissonance there? It's amazing. I know I keep harping on this, but sweet Jesus, that is really stupid. This guy's he's dumb as fuck. God, dog.
Atrocities that the Jews are doing. Like, show me a video. Show me a video. I'll be fine. I'll shut my mouth. Show me a video of them paragliding in Gaza and just offing people for no reason. Show me videos of them. There was this thing.
Guys, I don't know about them paragliding into Gaza, but we can very well find videos of Israeli settlers going into the West Bank with rifles and harassing Palestinians. People and people like, well, harass it isn't the same as. We have records of journalists who were there like, we're here. And for example, the Palestinians were doing demonstrations and the IDF is doing shots on them. Like they're just doing sniper shots. It isn't always, oh, we're just systematically murdering people. But guess what? Yeah, for decades, whether it's through demonstrations or whether they're doing peaceful demonstrations, the IDF shooting protesters, shooting Palestinians. You even have, you can even find records of older IDF soldiers talking about how they were raping Palestinians. Notice I'm not saying who's right or wrong here. I'm just saying that we have this. It's not hard to find. And I kind of think even if you present it to this guy, he's not going to be like, well, let me think of these things. Let me reconsider, because that's not the point. Because the dude's a grifter. I'll tell you why it upsets me. There's a reason. There's two main reasons it upsets me, but I'm going to let it finish. I'm not going to play this much longer.
Theory that they say deep in the night when the IDF, the Israeli military force, would just, when there's curfew, they just shoot Palestinian kids for no reason, or because they're out for curfew and they can do it, so they shoot them anyway. Show me the video. And this is the thing that bothers me too, is that this is not an even playing field. There is no, we need to have sympathy for both sides. Listen, I understand the innocent element, but this is not the same. These people are lobbing bombs into Israel. Just say that there was no Iron Dome. What do you think? What they're doing? Shoot in the air, and then they're gonna turn around and go in the ocean? They would just obliterate Israel if there was no Iron Dome. They would literally shoot thousands of missiles, indiscriminately killing all kind of people, even their people. Because there's a lot of Palestinians, hundreds of thousands of Palestinians work in Israel, right alongside the Jewish people, right alongside Israelis. I was there. I was in Israel. I saw it. Every hotel we stayed at, there were Muslim people who were there working alongside the Jewish people. And then at Shabbat, when Jews weren't working, the Palestinian people, the Muslim, they worked. They worked when the Jews didn't work. These people have been working together. Now, I'm sure there's a tremendous conflict, but by and large, in Jerusalem, you go to the Wailing Wall.
Okay, sorry about that. Kind of like I hit the wrong button. So I'm just going to here. I'll probably have to do. I'm going to stop here because I don't really. Okay, so what he says there is he talks about how the Hamas essentially is doing attacks on Israel and how they're hitting Muslims, and that's absolutely true. Like I mentioned before, I think it is 20% of the Israeli population is Arab, and by most, are there? I think I'm going to say that most of the Arabs there are Christian. Now, although there is a population of Arab Christians, I'm going to get into that. So what you have there is you have two different groups. So he's acknowledging something there. There's two different groups there. You have the people who are doing the attacks, who are Muslims, and then you have the people who are not involved with the attacks, who are victims of the attacks, who are Muslims. So that's the side we're talking about. So your sympathy has to go with, you have to separate Hamas from Arab people, just like you have to separate Israel from Jewish people, right? Here is the problem with people like Tatum. One, he doesn't really care about Israel. If he does, he's doing a bad job caring about Israel. The reason I'm going to say he doesn't care about Israel, because here's the thing, guys. Look at it like this, and this is how I look at the conflict, of how it can turn out. I think of certain things in history where we have to acknowledge the amount of violence that has been committed against Palestinian people. And the reason I'm saying acknowledge that violence that's been committed against Palestinian people is to give it an historical context. So the incident which immediately comes to mind here, which Tatum would probably say they were out of line anyway, because would be Nat Turner's rebellion in 1831. Because the reason I bring up that example is because in the West Hampton 1831 slave rebellion, Nat Turner, and I can't remember how many people were on his side, he, in his rebellion, he killed 50 people. And I think it may be disputed whether they were children, but I'm pretty sure he killed children and maybe babies. And he said that it was a religious calling to do so. They were enslaved. And if you were a slave, you were rape, mutilation. Does that justify killing babies? No. But we don't really talk about that, because then you have to get into it's like one of those things where we don't want to sit there and say, yeah, you have your children sold off, you have your body mutilated, have your women murdered generation after generation. Eventually you're going to have a breaking point. We don't want to say that, because it's a very uncomfortable conversation to have. And it's not easy to say, well, this side is wrong and this side is right. There'll be people who listen to this, who will listen to this and say, like, yeah, what happened to slaves, it was absolutely justified. I'm not going to wade into that. I personally think it's justified. but the result is that 50 whites were killed. I think the rebellion maybe involved a few dozen slaves, and 200 blacks were murdered in retaliation. Well, I won't say 200, but 200 blacks were murdered in retaliation beyond those people who involved with the rebellion. So what happens here is that we knew this was going to happen. The Palestinians do something, they kill a number of Israeli citizens, and then 5 to 10-fold are killed on the other side. Now, the reason I say people like Brandon Tatum don't care is because here's what it goes, guys. If you want to end this violence, you're going to have to look at it with nuance. You're going to have to come up with a decision where the reaction isn't violence. It simply is. You can't keep doing the same thing, and you don't realize you're doing the same thing unless you acknowledge the violence that you're committing against the other group. So in this country, if they kept saying that, guess we're going to, slavery is the right thing, we're going to keep doing it, then you would have had more slave revolts. You would have had more Nat Turners. You would have had more John Browns. The other thing that makes me think of is the Haitian Revolution, where if you look at the history of the Haitian Revolution, they killed French soldiers. I think they killed 25,000 French colonists, and those included men, women, children, babies as well, because the conditions in Haiti, the slave conditions in Haiti, were really worse than they were in the U.S. The conditions of slavery in the Caribbean were just by nature worse. It was a meat grinder. I think only about 5-6% of slaves were brought to the U.S. And the reason so many were taken to the Caribbean and South America, because they basically just work them to death, because the sale of sugar was so lucrative, they could just afford to just work the slaves until they just died young. In the U.S., the profit margins were a bit thinner than to do that. So that's the way we have to look at it. And we can even really make comparisons between the indigenous people in the U.S., because we have these stories of how the indigenous people in the U.S. would attack colonists, or not colonists, but they were colonists really, but frontiers people and settlers, and we say, oh, they did these barbaric things to the settlers. And they would sometimes, murder entire families, including children. But at the same time, we now recognize that, look at the terrible atrocities that were committed to indigenous people. So if you're going to look at this conflict, you're going to have to legitimately acknowledge both sides, what's going on there. And who has the power to stop this at this point is really Israel. Yes, they have the Iron Dome, they lob the bombs there, but who has the overwhelming amount of military force is Israel. And by the way, guys, like he's saying I've been to Israel. Well, here's the thing, guys. I've been in a place where we've been in occupied land, and I've been in a place where I have been within, and I don't know any other way to say this. I've been near car bombs. Like if I really felt a car bomb, I wouldn't be here now. But I felt the force of a car bomb. I've been awakened at night by the room shaking from a car bomb. I've seen this. I've been in a convoy where several vehicles back, they got hit by an improvised explosive device. Even within those conditions, they're coming at us. We had the overwhelming force there. And at some point, you have to look at the nuance. He's not doing this because all it is just a grift for him. He's jumping on the next grift. That's really what it comes down to. So if you sit there and keep saying like, oh, they were here 2,000 years ago, they have whatever to the land, okay, then good luck with that, man. I don't know what to say. You could sit there and tell I don't know. You could sit there and tell, you could sit there and tell that the slaves that we have mandate by God that you're supposed to serve us. You have the mark of Ham. See how well that worked out for you. It didn't if you were in Haiti during the revolution. Also, guys, I just want to say this again. How do you sit there and listen to him where he sits there and say like, well, we're in the U.S. now, so we're not giving up the land, so it's different. So if you try to come back, they're still here. They're still here, man. I mean, really, so should like the indigenous people here, they never left? So can they reclaim all the land? Can they show up at your house and be like, this was our land. Can we have that? According to him, but he's like, am I the crazy one here? As soon as he says that, guys, y'all should click him off. Because it's just, there's no consistency at that point. I have to stop now. This guy's just yeah.